Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Trust. Mercer Donovan didn't come from money. Born to a struggling construction worker and a seamstress in rural Michigan, he grew up learning the value of hard work and perseverance. His father's back-breaking labor on construction sites instilled in him a fascination with buildings, but also a determination to work with his mind rather than his hands. Through sheer determination and a series of scholarships, Mercer put himself through architecture school, graduating top of his class from an elite university. It was during a prestigious internship at Holloway Architecture that Mercer first encountered Natalia Chambers. She was the daughter of Vincent Chambers, founder of Chambers Development Group, one of the largest commercial real estate development companies on the East Coast. Natalia, with her piercing blue eyes and razor-sharp business acumen, was being groomed to eventually take over the family empire alongside her brothers, Brooks and Lawson. Their meeting was serendipitous. Mercer was presenting designs for a Chambers Group project when Natalia interrupted his presentation to ask questions that demonstrated her exceptional understanding of architectural principles. Mercer was instantly captivated by her intelligence and beauty. "Your technical skills are impressive, but your vision is what sets you apart," Natalia told him after the meeting. "Most architects design buildings. You design experiences." Their courtship moved quickly, despite the obvious class differences. Vincent Chambers was initially hesitant about his daughter's relationship with a nobody architect, as he called Mercer behind closed doors. But Mercer's talent was undeniable, and Vincent was nothing if not a businessman who recognized valuable assets. "If you're going to be part of my daughter's life, you might as well be part of the family business," Vincent said during a tense dinner at the Chambers estate 6 months into Mercer and Natalia's relationship. "We need someone with your eye for innovation." Mercer accepted the offer, seeing an opportunity to design on a scale most architects only dreamed of. Within a year, he and Natalia were married in a lavish ceremony befitting the Chambers name. Vincent presented them with a wedding gift, a corner office for Mercer at Chambers Development Group headquarters. The early years were blissful and productive. Mercer's designs transformed the Chambers portfolio, bringing in prestigious awards and lucrative contracts. His sustainability-focused mixed-use buildings became the company's signature, attracting high-profile clients who specifically requested the Donovan touch. While Natalia managed client relationships, Mercer revolutionized their design approach. But as Vincent's health began to decline 5 years into the marriage, subtle power shifts emerged within the family business. Brooks and Lawson, who had always regarded Mercer as an outsider, began excluding him from key meetings. They redirected staff resources away from his projects and questioned his decisions in front of clients. "It's just business restructuring," Natalia assured him when he raised concerns. "Dad's stepping back, and everyone's adjusting." Mercer might have believed her if he hadn't noticed other changes. Late-night texts she quickly hid when he entered the room. Unexplained absences. A growing emotional distance. And most tellingly, her increasingly close professional relationship with Dominic Russo, the charismatic new head of business development she had personally hired. Dominic was everything Mercer wasn't, smooth-talking, with old money connections, and the kind of polished charm that came from generations of privilege. Where Mercer was thoughtful and deliberate, Dominic was quick with decisions and promises. Where Mercer built genuine relationships through consistent delivery, Dominic dazzled with extravagant gestures and elite social connections. One evening, while working late, Mercer overheard Brooks and Lawson in the conference room with Dominic. "Mercer's becoming a liability," Brooks said. "His projects take too long. Clients want fast returns, not architectural statements." "I've been cultivating relationships with more pragmatic design firms," Dominic replied. "Firms that understand business comes before art." "And how's my sister handling all this?" Lawson asked, his tone implying more than professional concern. "Natalia sees the bigger picture," Dominic answered with unmistakable intimacy in his voice. "She knows what's necessary for the company's future." Mercer withdrew silently, his architect's mind already beginning to blueprint a response to this betrayal. He wouldn't confront them yet. First, he needed to understand the full scope of what he was facing, and to ensure he wouldn't be destroyed in the process. Chapter 2. Structural Weaknesses. Over the next few months, Mercer operated with the precision of a master architect executing a complex design. On the surface, He maintained his regular work routine while quietly gathering information and preparing contingency plans. He discovered the depth of the betrayal went further than he'd imagined. Through careful observation and strategic conversations with junior staff loyal to him, Mercer learned that Dominic and the Chambers brothers had been systematically undermining his position for nearly a year. Project files disappeared from the company server. His design recommendations were altered before reaching clients. Staff members he trusted were reassigned. And most painfully, Natalia was not just complicit, she was an active participant. Late one night, Mercer accessed Natalia's company email after noticing she'd left herself logged in on their home computer. What he found confirmed everything. Extensive communications between her brothers, and Dominic discussing the Mercer situation and planning his eventual removal. More devastating were the personal exchanges between Natalia and Dominic, intimate messages that left no doubt about their affair. One email from Natalia particularly cut deep. M has served his purpose. His designs put us on the map, but we need someone who understands this business is about relationships, not just buildings. You're that person, D. Rather than confront Natalia immediately, Mercer channeled his rage into methodical planning. He hired a private investigator to document the affair and track the business machinations against him. He consulted discreetly with a lawyer about his rights within the company, discovering that his employment contract, which he'd signed in the flush of love and trust, left him vulnerable to exactly the kind of ouster being planned. What the Chambers family didn't know was that Mercer had maintained personal relationships with every major client he'd brought to the firm. While the family believed clients were loyal to the Chambers name, the reality was that many worked with the company specifically because of Mercer's vision and integrity. Your family thinks architecture is about buildings, Mercer's mentor had once told him. But it's really about trust. When someone hires you to create their space, they're trusting you with their future. Mercer had built that trust carefully, and now he would leverage it. He created a private digital portfolio of all his designs and innovations for the company. He documented his contributions to each successful project. And most importantly, he began having quiet conversations with select clients about future possibilities. If circumstances were to change, he asked one longtime client during a site visit, would you follow the design or the designer? Mercer. The client replied without hesitation, we hired Chambers because of you. The family name opened the door, but your vision is why we stayed. Similar conversations with other clients reassured Mercer that his position was stronger than the Chambers family realized. While they saw clients as loyal to their family legacy, Mercer knew the truth was more complex. At home, he maintained a facade of normalcy, though the emotional distance between him and Natalia grew wider each day. She worked later, attended more client dinners, and barely engaged with him on personal or professional levels. Mercer used this time to secure his financial position, moving personal funds to accounts Natalia couldn't access and documenting all joint assets. He found an apartment downtown and put down a deposit, set up a small office space in a co-working facility, and began the groundwork for what would come next. He also cultivated relationships with talented young architects and project managers at Chambers who were loyal to him rather than the family. People who appreciated his mentorship and vision, who might follow him if circumstances changed. The betrayal crystallized one evening when Mercer returned home unexpectedly from a site visit to find Dominic's expensive sports car in their driveway. Rather than confront them, he quietly left, checked into a hotel, and accelerated his plans. The next morning, he called his most trusted colleague, Sophia Reyes, and invited her to coffee at a cafe far from the office. Something's coming, he told her. I can't say more now, but I want you to know that I value your work and loyalty. Soon, I may have an opportunity for you. Sophia, who had grown frustrated with the politics at Chambers, studied him carefully before nodding. Whatever it is, I'm in. Several others feel the same way. Keep this between us, Mercer cautioned, and be ready to move quickly when the time comes. The final confirmation came during a tense executive committee meeting where Brooks presented a 5-year strategic plan that dramatically reduced the design department's role and elevated business development, Dominic's territory, to a central position. When Mercer questioned the change, Lawson dismissively replied, the market's evolving, Mercer. We need to prioritize rapid development over architectural indulgences. Natalia, seated beside Dominic rather than her husband, avoided Mercer's eyes as she added, "The board agrees this direction better serves our investors." The stage was set. Thanksgiving at the Chambers family estate would arrive in 2 weeks, and Mercer knew exactly what was coming, and precisely how he would respond. Chapter 3. The Collapse. The Chambers family Thanksgiving was always an elaborate affair at the sprawling family estate, more of a business function than a family gathering. This year, Mercer arrived separately from Natalia, who had claimed early meetings required her to be there hours before the scheduled dinner. The grand dining room was impeccably decorated with harvest arrangements and the family's heirloom china. Vincent Chambers, now using a wheelchair but still imposing, sat at the head of the table. His declining health had accelerated the power struggle within the company, but his sharp mind remained intact. Mercer immediately noticed Dominic's presence at the table, a first for a non-family member at this traditional gathering. Dominic sat beside Natalia, their body language communicating an intimacy they no longer bothered to disguise. Throughout dinner, conversation revolved around company successes from which Mercer had been systematically excluded. Brooks boasted about new acquisitions, Lawson discussed financing strategies, and Dominic smoothly interjected with client anecdotes that painted him as the company's relationship savior. Natalia occasionally glanced at Mercer with something resembling guilt, quickly masked by practiced indifference. Vincent watched everything with shrewd eyes that missed nothing, though he remained largely silent. After dessert, Brooks stood and raised his glass. "Before we continue celebrating, there's some important family business to address." He nodded toward his brother. "Lawson and I would like to speak with Mercer in Father's study." Vincent frowned slightly, but said nothing as Brooks and Lawson led Mercer away from the table. Natalia hesitated, then followed with Dominic close behind. The study was a testament to old money and power, leather-bound books, hunting trophies, and photographs chronicling 3 generations of Chambers business triumphs. Mercer had always felt like an intruder here, and today was no exception. Brooks closed the heavy door and turned to face Mercer. "We'll make this quick and painless. The executive committee met yesterday and voted on a restructuring plan." "I wasn't informed of any meeting," Mercer said calmly. "It was emergency action," Lawson interjected. "Market sensitive. We're cutting you out of the family business," Brooks continued, "and her new lover will take your position." He gestured toward Dominic, who stood with his hand possessively on Natalia's lower back. Mercer looked directly at his wife. "And what do you have to say about this?" Natalia remained silent, studying the Persian carpet as if it contained hidden messages. "Your contributions have been appreciated," Lawson added with corporate detachment. "But the company is moving in a different direction. You'll receive a fair severance package contingent on a non-compete agreement." Mercer nodded once and turned to leave. "That's it," Brooks called after him, clearly disappointed by the lack of drama. "No argument, no fight." Mercer paused at the door. What would be the point? He left without another word, walking through the grand house for what he knew would be the last time. As he retrieved his coat, Vincent's personal nurse wheeled the old man into the foyer. "They're fools," Vincent said quietly, his voice raspy from illness. "And she's the biggest fool of all." "Perhaps," Mercer replied. "Or perhaps they'll get exactly what they deserve." Vincent studied him with eyes still sharp despite his failing body. "You're not as defeated as you're letting them believe." Mercer simply smiled, shook the old man's hand with genuine respect, and walked out into the cold November night. That evening, in his newly rented apartment surrounded by architectural drawings and client files he'd quietly removed from the office over preceding weeks, Mercer initiated what he'd been meticulously planning for months. First, he called Sophia Reyes. "It's time. Contact the others. We start tomorrow." Next, he sent a single text message to a developer who had encrypted a specialized communication platform for him, untraceable and secure. The message contained one word: execute. By midnight, algorithms began running. Scheduled emails were queued for delivery at precisely 9 a.m., when the Chambers Development Group offices would be buzzing with post-holiday activity, and digital time bombs were set to detonate across the company's carefully constructed reputation. Mercer slept soundly for the first time in months, awakening at dawn to prepare for the day that would change everything. He dressed carefully in his best suit, the one Natalia had always said made him look unstoppable, and headed to his new office. At exactly 9 a.m., as executives at Chambers Development were settling into their Monday routines, every major client received a personalized email. After years of dedicated service leading design innovation at Chambers Development Group, I'm excited to announce the launch of Donovan Design and Development. I'd be honored to continue our relationship at my new venture, where my focus remains on creating spaces that transform lives and communities. I'll call this afternoon to discuss your project's seamless transition. Each email included detailed plans for the client's ongoing projects, plans that existed only in Mercer's private files, not in the Chambers company system. Simultaneously, key industry contacts received press releases announcing the formation of Mercer's new firm, featuring quotes from respected architecture critics about his visionary approach. Financial publications received tips about turmoil within Chambers Development leadership and questions about project management transitions that would raise investor concerns. By noon, Mercer's phone was ringing constantly with clients seeking reassurance about their projects. By 3 o'clock, Sophia Reyes and 7 other top talents from Chambers had resigned and arrived at Mercer's new office. By 5, the first client had officially transferred their contract to Donovan Design and Development. When Mercer finally answered a call from Natalia that evening, her voice trembled with a mixture of rage and panic. "What have you done?" "The Westridge development is threatening to pull out completely." "They're not threatening," Mercer replied calmly. "They signed with me an hour ago. That's our biggest project." "Not anymore. This is illegal. We'll sue you into oblivion." "Check clause 23.7 of my employment contract," Mercer replied. "The one your brother Lawson insisted on to ensure I couldn't compete if I ever left voluntarily. It specifies that in case of termination by the company, I retain rights to continue service to any client who chooses to follow me. You didn't fire me for cause. You restructured me out. Different legal category." The silence on the other end told him Natalia was realizing the magnitude of their miscalculation. "Why are you doing this?" she finally asked, her voice smaller now. "Because those clients were always loyal to me, not you," Mercer answered truthfully. "Your family never understood that. Neither did you." Over the next 3 weeks, the situation at Chambers Development deteriorated rapidly. Without Mercer's designs and client relationships, the company hemorrhaged contracts. Dominic's smooth talk couldn't replace concrete deliverables. Brooks and Lawson's financial maneuvers couldn't compensate for the exodus of talent that followed Mercer. By Christmas, industry insiders were whispering that Chambers Development Group was facing bankruptcy. The company that had stood for 3 generations was collapsing in less than a month. And Mercer was just getting started. Chapter 4, Retaliation. The January wind cut through the financial district like a blade as Mercer Donovan strode toward the gleaming glass tower that housed his rapidly expanding firm. In just 6 weeks, Donovan Design and Development had secured contracts worth over $200 million, hired 38 employees, 15 poached directly from Chambers, and established itself as the most talked-about firm in the industry. Today's board meeting would cement another milestone, a partnership with Tanaka Global, one of Asia's largest development conglomerates. It was a client Chambers had pursued unsuccessfully for years. As Mercer entered the sleek conference room where Sophia Reyes was preparing presentation materials, his phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret the day you crossed this family. Watch your back." Mercer showed the message to Sophia, who frowned. "That's the 3rd threat this week. Should we involve the police?" "Not yet," Mercer replied. "It's just intimidation. The Chambers brothers have always preferred threats to action." He was wrong. The meeting with Tanaka went exceptionally well until the topic of building permits arose. Hiroshi Tanaka, the conglomerate CEO, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "We've heard concerning rumors about regulatory issues with your projects, Mr. Donovan. Multiple sources suggest your permits are being questioned." Mercer maintained his composure, though inwardly he cursed. "I can assure you our regulatory compliance is impeccable. If you've heard otherwise, I'd be interested to know the source." "Anonymous communications," Tanaka replied, "but quite specific, mentioning projects by name, citing potential violations." The meeting concluded cordially, but without the signed contract Mercer had expected. Later investigation revealed that every regulatory office handling Donovan projects had received anonymous tips about potential code violations, all baseless, but all requiring time-consuming inspections and reviews. That same week, Mercer's primary bank called to discuss irregularities with his business accounts. A credit rating agency contacted him about a sudden drop in his personal score, and 3 smaller clients unexpectedly pulled their projects, citing concerns about delivery capacity. It's a coordinated attack, Sophia confirmed after investigating, and it goes beyond the Chambers family. These moves require influence in banking, regulatory bodies, and industry circles. Dominic Russo, Mercer concluded. His family has old connections throughout the city. This is his style: whisper campaigns and leverage relationships. The counterattack escalated when Mercer arrived at his apartment to find it had been broken into. Nothing was stolen, but his architectural models were smashed, family photos destroyed, and a wedding picture of him and Natalia left with a knife through his face. The police documented the vandalism but offered little hope of finding the perpetrators. No security cameras in this section of the hallway, the detective noted. Very targeted, very personal. Someone wants you scared. Rather than frightening him, the incident crystallized Mercer's resolve. That night, he called a former client who now headed one of the city's most prestigious private investigation firms. I need everything on Dominic Russo, Mercer instructed. Family connections, business dealings, personal habits. Especially any vulnerabilities. That's not a small request, the investigator cautioned. The Russo family has protected their reputation carefully for generations. I'm not looking for rumors, Mercer clarified. I need documented facts they wouldn't want public. While the investigation proceeded, Mercer focused on strengthening his business against further attacks. He diversified banking relationships, implemented rigorous security protocols, and accelerated construction on existing projects to demonstrate delivery capability. He also began a strategic public relations campaign highlighting the innovative aspects of Donovan designs, garnering industry awards and positive press that countered the whispers against him. 3 weeks later, the private investigator delivered a comprehensive report on Dominic Russo. Most of it was unsurprising: privileged upbringing, Ivy League education, carefully managed career trajectory. But buried within the family history was a crucial detail: the source of the Russo fortune. His great-grandfather wasn't an importer as family lore claims, the investigator explained. He was a bootlegger during Prohibition who leveraged those profits into legitimate businesses after repeal. The family has spent 3 generations burying that history and presenting themselves as old money aristocracy. That's useful, but hardly scandalous by today's standards, Mercer noted. The scandal isn't the origin, it's the ongoing connection, the investigator continued. The Russo Family Foundation, which burnishes their philanthropic image, has been functioning as a sophisticated tax evasion vehicle for decades. Dominic sits on its board and has personally signed fraudulent documents. The investigator slid across documentation that would be devastating if made public. How did you get this? Mercer asked, impressed. A disgruntled former foundation executive kept records as insurance. He was willing to share, for a price. Mercer considered the information thoughtfully. I won't use this yet. It's a nuclear option. For now, we'll keep it as insurance. That restraint was tested 2 days later when Mercer received a legal notice from Chambers Development Group alleging theft of intellectual property, client tampering, and breach of fiduciary duty. The lawsuit demanded $50 million in damages plus the return of all clients who had followed Mercer. The same day, a prominent architecture blog published an exposé questioning whether Mercer had actually designed the award-winning projects credited to him at Chambers, suggesting he had claimed credit for team efforts. The coordinated attack was clearly intended to destroy both his business and reputation. Most concerning was that the lawsuit contained internal details about his client communications that could only have come from someone with access to his personal files. "We have a leak," he told Sophia during an emergency meeting. "Someone close to us is feeding information to the Chambers camp." Sophia's team conducted a security audit, eventually identifying a junior designer who had been recruited by Lawson Chambers to spy on Donovan operations. Rather than firing him immediately, Mercer called the young man into his office. "You have a choice," Mercer said calmly. "You can leave now and face industrial espionage charges, or you can become a valuable asset by feeding the Chambers exactly what I want them to know." The designer, pale and trembling, agreed to become a double agent. Over the following weeks, he delivered carefully crafted misinformation to Lawson while Mercer monitored the Chambers' responses. Meanwhile, Mercer filed a robust countersuit against Chambers Development, highlighting their systematic campaign of defamation and interference. The legal battle quickly became a major story in business publications, with most portraying Mercer as an innovative architect being persecuted by a declining family enterprise resistant to change. The pressure on Chambers' development intensified when Mercer leveraged his new relationship with Tanaka Global to secure financing for a major urban renewal project, a project previously awarded to Chambers but now redirected to Donovan Design due to implementation concerns. This victory was particularly sweet because it had been Dominic's primary focus at Chambers. The loss of the Tanaka project was a devastating blow to his standing within the company. Late one evening, as Mercer worked alone in his office, his private elevator opened to reveal Natalia. She looked thinner than he remembered, with dark circles under her eyes and none of her usual confident poise. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "This war is destroying both companies. There must be a way to end it that benefits us all." Mercer regarded her coolly. "Us all? Or just you and your lover? I've heard your engagement announcement has been postponed. Trouble in paradise already." Natalia flinched. "It's complicated. Dominic isn't who I thought he was." "No," Mercer agreed. "He's exactly who I knew he was. You were just too blinded by ambition to see it." "That's not fair, Mercer. You were distant, obsessed with your designs. Dominic made me feel valued, included in the business decisions. So you betrayed me, professionally and personally, because I didn't include you enough in meetings?" Mercer's tone was incredulous. "You could have talked to me, Natalia. Instead, you plotted with your brothers and lover to cut me out of the company I helped build." "I made a mistake," she admitted, tears forming. "But this vendetta won't bring either of us peace. What do you want, Mercer? Name your price to end this." Mercer studied the woman he had once loved beyond reason. "There is no price, Natalia. This isn't about money. It's about consequences. Actions have them. Yours, your brother's, Dominic's. And mine too. Are you really willing to destroy my family's legacy just for revenge?" "I'm not destroying anything," Mercer replied evenly. "I'm building something new from the wreckage you created. There's a difference." As Natalia turned to leave, Mercer added, "You should know that Dominic has been meeting with venture capitalists about financing a takeover of what remains of Chambers Development. He doesn't plan to keep the Chambers name or family involved once he controls the company." The shock on Natalia's face confirmed she hadn't known. "You're lying. Check his calendar for meetings with Apex Ventures. Look at the proposal document saved in his personal cloud under Project Phoenix. The Chambers name isn't mentioned once in the future branding." Natalia left without another word, but Mercer knew the seed was planted. The fracturing of the alliance against him had begun. Chapter 5: Siege Warfare. By early March, what had started as a business dispute had escalated into all-out war. The Chambers' lawsuit against Mercer proceeded aggressively, with Dominic apparently convincing the family to spare no expense in legal fees despite their deteriorating financial position. The constant legal battles drained resources from Donovan Design, forcing Mercer to divert attention from client projects to defense strategies. Several smaller clients, unwilling to be caught in the crossfire, withdrew their contracts and sought less controversial firms. "We need to end this," Sophia urged during a strategy session. "The legal costs alone will bankrupt us within 6 months if something doesn't change. Chambers will run out of money before we do," Mercer insisted, though privately he shared her concern. His new firm had secured impressive contracts, but legal fees were mounting faster than revenue. The situation worsened when the city's building department suddenly suspended permits for all Donovan Design projects pending a comprehensive regulatory review. The official reason cited concerns about structural calculations, but Mercer's sources confirmed Dominic had leveraged connections with the deputy commissioner. With projects stalled and legal bills mounting, Mercer faced the first serious threat to his new company's survival. The siege tactics were working. He was losing the war of attrition. That evening, he received an unexpected call from Vincent Chambers. "My study, tomorrow, 10 a.m., the old man said without preamble. "Come alone and tell no one. Use the service entrance." The next morning, Mercer found Vincent in his wheelchair by the window overlooking the estate gardens. The old man looked friendlier than at Thanksgiving, but his eyes remained sharp. "They're running the company into the ground," Vincent stated flatly once Mercer was seated. 50 years of my work, destroyed in 3 months. "I'm sorry about that," Mercer said sincerely. "My quarrel was never with you, Vincent. No, you were the son I wished my boys had become." Vincent's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his blanket. "Dominic Russo is poison. He's turned Natalia against her family, convinced my sons to pursue this vendetta regardless of cost, and is systematically positioning himself to take control. Why tell me this? Because I want to stop him, and you're the only one with the skill to do it." Vincent pushed a file folder across the table. "These are board documents Dominic doesn't know I still review. Look at page 17, the loan covenants." Mercer examined the documents, quickly spotting the issue. These financing terms essentially sign control over to the lenders if certain performance metrics aren't met, and with projects stalled and clients leaving. Exactly. Chambers Development will default within 60 days. When that happens, Dominic's anonymous investment group, which I suspect is actually him and several associates, will acquire controlling interest. My children will be figureheads at best, discarded entirely at worst. What do you propose? "A truce," Vincent said firmly. "Drop your countersuit. I'll ensure our legal action against you ends. In exchange, help save the company from Dominic." Mercer considered this unexpected offer. "Why would I help save the company that tried to destroy me?" "Because you still care about the buildings," Vincent replied knowingly. "And because revenge against my foolish children is one thing. Letting a predator like Dominic destroy a legacy of good architecture is another." After a long silence, Mercer responded, "I'll need something more concrete than promises. The attacks against my business must stop immediately. The permit holds, the whisper campaign, all of it." "I can handle the permit situation," Vincent assured him. "As for the rest, I need you to help me show my family who Dominic really is." Mercer hesitated, then decided to share part of what he knew. He's planning a takeover. The Project Phoenix documents outline his plan to rebrand without the Chamber's name once he has control. Vincent's face hardened. "Get me proof. Concrete evidence I can show the board." "If I do this," Mercer stipulated, "I want exclusive development rights to the Riverfront District project. It was my design from the beginning." "Done," Vincent agreed without hesitation. "But we need to move quickly." As Mercer left through the service entrance, he spotted Dominic's car arriving at the main house. The confrontation was accelerating toward its climax. Back at his office, Mercer called the private investigator. "I need everything on Project Phoenix. Documents, recordings, anything that proves Dominic's true intentions for Chambers Development." "That won't be cheap or easy," the investigator warned. "We'd need access to his personal devices or accounts." "Focus on his assistant," Mercer suggested. "People like Dominic always underestimate the loyalty of those they consider beneath them." While this plan developed, Mercer redirected his legal team to prepare for settlement rather than continued battle. He also reached out discreetly to the city's deputy commissioner about resolving the permit misunderstanding. 2 days later, his building permits were reinstated without explanation. The same day, Chambers Development's lawyers suddenly requested settlement discussions rather than proceeding to discovery. The abrupt change confirmed Vincent's influence was still significant when he chose to exercise it. But the respite was brief. That evening, as Mercer left his office, 2 men approached him in the parking garage. Before he could react, a third attacker struck from behind. The assault was brutally efficient, clearly professional rather than random violence. "Message from Mr. Russo," one man said as Mercer lay on the concrete. "Back off completely, or next time we won't be so gentle." Despite cracked ribs and a dislocated shoulder, Mercer refused hospital treatment that would create a record. Instead, he called Cooper Jenkins, his oldest friend and a former military medic now working as a paramedic. "Jesus, Mercer," Cooper said while treating him in his apartment. "This isn't worth dying over." "It's not about worth," Mercer replied through gritted teeth. "It's about not letting them win." The attack changed Mercer's approach. This was no longer just business. Dominic had made it dangerously personal. The veneer of civilized conflict had been stripped away. The next morning, despite his injuries, Mercer met with a security consultant who had protected high-profile executives during corporate takeover battles. They've escalated to physical intimidation, Mercer explained. I need countermeasures. The consultant's recommendations were comprehensive: security systems for home and office, protective drivers, counter-surveillance measures, and most controversially, a legal handgun with proper licensing and training. I've never considered a weapon necessary, Mercer admitted. It's insurance, the consultant replied. Like an alarm system you hope never to use. While implementing these security measures, Mercer received a breakthrough from his investigator. Dominic's assistant had agreed to help, motivated not by money, but by her own mistreatment. He's verbally abusive, takes credit for her work, and recently threatened to fire her when she questioned expense reports, the investigator explained. She's provided access to his cloud storage and recorded conversations with investors about the takeover. The evidence was damning. Dominic had explicitly discussed removing the Chambers family once he controlled the company, referring to them as dead weight and entitled trust fund parasites. He planned to sell off their legacy properties and focus exclusively on quick turnaround, high-margin developments, the antithesis of the quality-focused approach Vincent had built. Most disturbing were references to Vincent's declining health and how it conveniently accelerates our timeline. The implication that Dominic welcomed, perhaps even contributed to, Vincent's deterioration was impossible to miss. Mercer immediately arranged another secret meeting with Vincent, bringing copies of all evidence. The old man's fury was palpable as he reviewed the materials. Get Natalia here, Vincent instructed his nurse. Tell her it's urgent. When Natalia arrived, her expression shifted from concern for her father to shock at seeing Mercer, then to horror as she reviewed Dominic's documented betrayal. He told me the takeover was a last resort to save the company from my brother's mismanagement, she whispered. That we would run it together, preserving the family legacy while modernizing operations. He's been lying to all of us, Vincent said grimly, using each family member's concerns about the others to manipulate everyone. Natalia looked at Mercer, really seeing him for the first time since their estrangement. Your face, what happened? Ask your fiancé about his methods of negotiation, Mercer replied coldly. Vincent intervened before the conversation could deteriorate. Focus on the issue at hand. We need to remove Dominic before he can execute this takeover. That means convincing Brooks and Lawson of the threat. They won't believe anything coming from Mercer, Natalia pointed out. Then it can't come from me, Mercer agreed. It needs to come from you, with your father's backing. The plan they developed was straightforward. Vincent would call an emergency board meeting ostensibly to discuss settlement with Donovan Design. Once assembled, he would present the evidence of Dominic's planned takeover, with Natalia confirming the authenticity of the materials. What about you? Natalia asked Mercer as they concluded the planning. I'll be working on a more permanent solution to the Dominic problem, he answered, declining to elaborate further. As Mercer left, Vincent called after him. Remember our agreement. Save my company from this predator, and the Riverfront project is yours. Mercer nodded, though his motivations had evolved beyond mere business advantage. This had become a matter of justice and survival. Chapter 6. The Precipice. The emergency board meeting at Chambers Development unfolded exactly as planned. Vincent presented the evidence of Dominic's betrayal, Natalia confirmed its authenticity, and the board, including a shocked Brooks and Lawson, voted unanimously to terminate Dominic's employment immediately. Security escorted Dominic from the building within the hour, his access revoked, and personal items delivered to the curb in bankers' boxes. His face, contorted with rage as he was removed, was captured by company security cameras and promptly leaked to industry publications. Mercer received news of the firing from Natalia. It's done. Father has called off the lawsuit against you as well. He says to remind you of your promise regarding the company's future. The victory should have felt more satisfying. Instead, Mercer felt a growing unease. Dominic Russo was dangerous, well-connected, and now had nothing to lose. His concern proved justified the following morning when every major client of Donovan Design received an anonymous document detailing alleged structural flaws in Mercer's designs, including manipulated engineering reports suggesting potential catastrophic failures. This is beyond defamation, Sophia said as they reviewed the fabricated evidence. He's trying to create public panic about our buildings. Before they could formulate a response, the state's architectural licensing board contacted Mercer about an emergency review of his professional credentials based on serious safety concerns raised by multiple sources. Simultaneously, a financial journalist called seeking comment on rumors that Donovan Design was facing bankruptcy due to client departures and pending regulatory actions. By afternoon, their stock price had plummeted 32%, and 3 major projects were placed on temporary hold pending safety reviews. He's burning everything down, Mercer realized. If he can't have Chambers development, he'll destroy both our companies out of spite. The situation deteriorated further when a woman Mercer had never met filed a sexual harassment complaint against him, claiming inappropriate behavior during her brief employment at Chambers Development. Though completely fabricated, the allegation gained immediate traction in industry publications already primed by Dominic's whisper campaign. With his professional reputation, company viability, and personal integrity all under simultaneous attack, Mercer faced the greatest crisis of his career. Even Vincent Chambers' support offered limited protection against this comprehensive destruction of everything Mercer had built. That evening, alone in his apartment with security guards posted outside, Mercer received a text from an unknown number. Enjoying your fall from grace. This is just the beginning. You'll be bankrupt, unlicensed, and unemployable within 30 days. Unless we meet to discuss terms. Tomorrow, 10 p.m., West Side Marina, Slip 42. Come alone, or everything gets worse. Mercer recognized Dominic's theatrical flair in the meeting location, isolated, dramatic, and designed to intimidate. He also understood the implicit threat, meet me, or I'll continue destroying everything you've built. Against the advice of his security team, Mercer decided to confront Dominic directly. He was tired of proxy battles and professional attacks. It was time to end this personally. He spent the day preparing meticulously. First, he transferred controlling interest in Donovan Design to Sophia through temporary legal instruments that would revert to him after 30 days. If something happens to me, he instructed her, use the contingency plans we discussed. Next, he recorded a detailed account of all events leading to this confrontation, including Dominic's threats and attacks, securely storing copies with his lawyer and in cloud storage accessible to trusted associates. Finally, he contacted Detective Rivera, the officer who had investigated the vandalism of his apartment. I'm meeting the man responsible for the attacks against me, Mercer explained. If anything happens to me, you'll know where to start looking. This is a terrible idea, Rivera warned. Let us handle it officially. You and I both know he's too careful to leave evidence connecting him directly to any crime, Mercer replied. This needs to end tonight. As dusk fell, Mercer checked the licensed handgun recommended by his security consultant, hoping its presence would be sufficient deterrent without need for use. He drove himself to the marina, deliberately arriving 30 minutes early to survey the location. The West Side Marina was nearly deserted on this cold spring evening. Slip 42 housed a sleek yacht named Phoenix Rising, the same term Dominic had used for his takeover plan. The vessel was dark except for dim lighting in what appeared to be the main cabin. Mercer approached cautiously, senses heightened for any sign of ambush. As he stepped onto the gangway, a voice called from the darkness. Right on time. I appreciate punctuality. Dominic emerged from the yacht's cabin, champagne flute in hand, as if hosting a social gathering rather than a confrontation. Join me inside. It's too cold for deck conversations. I prefer to stay where others might see us, Mercer replied, remaining on the gangway. Dominic shrugged. Suit yourself. Though I assure you, no one will interrupt us here. He sipped his champagne while studying Mercer with amused contempt. You look terrible. How are the ribs healing? Let's skip the pleasantries. What do you want? Direct as always. Very well. Dominic set down his glass. I want you to publicly admit that your designs at Chambers were collaborative efforts for which you claimed sole credit. I want you to acknowledge structural flaws in your recent projects and announce a temporary suspension of operations pending comprehensive safety reviews. Finally, I want controlling interest in Donovan Design as compensation for the damage you've done to my reputation. Mercer laughed despite the pain in his ribs. That's not a negotiation. That's a surrender. It's the only path that doesn't end with your complete destruction, Dominic countered. I've spent years cultivating the relationships I'm now using against you. Building inspectors, journalists, licensing officials, financial analysts, they all trust my word over yours. I can make it impossible for you to work as an architect in this country. All this because I exposed your takeover plan. This was never about Chambers' development, Dominic said dismissively. That decrepit company was just a stepping stone. This is about you refusing to know your place. You were supposed to be the useful outsider, the talented architect who created value but remained subordinate to those born to lead. Like you, Mercer's tone was scathing. Precisely like me. Men like you build things. Men like me own things. Dominic's expression hardened. Your defiance has cost me time and opportunity. For that, you'll pay one way or another. You overestimate your power and underestimate mine, Mercer replied calmly. Every attack you've launched has been documented and traced back to you. Your financial manipulation, the fraudulent reviews, the fabricated harassment claim, it's all connected to people in your direct orbit. Dominic smiled. Proving any of that would take years in court. By then, there will be nothing left of you to vindicate. You're assuming I'm planning to fight this through conventional channels. Something in Mercer's tone gave Dominic pause. What are you planning? I could tell you about the comprehensive dossier on the Russo Family Foundation's tax evasion schemes, or the recorded conversations with your assault team that are already in a detective's hands, or the fact that this entire conversation is being transmitted to multiple secure locations. Mercer watched realization dawn on Dominic's face. But that would spoil the surprise. Dominic's composure cracked. You're bluffing. No one has that kind of information on my family. Every family has secrets, especially those built on prohibition bootlegging rather than legitimate importing, as your official history claims. The reference to his family's hidden origins visibly shook Dominic. He lurched forward suddenly, reaching inside his jacket. Mercer reacted instantly, drawing his own weapon. I wouldn't. Dominic froze, slowly withdrawing his hand to show a flask rather than a gun. Just a drink to steady my nerves. You're more dangerous than you appear, Donovan. You have no idea, Mercer agreed. Here's my counteroffer. You retract all allegations against me and my firm. You leave the city permanently. In exchange, the information I have remains private. You expect me to just disappear? Abandon everything I've built? I expect you to make a rational decision about your future. Prison for tax fraud and conspiracy to commit assault would be unpleasant for someone accustomed to your lifestyle. Dominic's eyes darted as he calculated options. I need time to consider this. You have until noon tomorrow. After that, everything I have goes to the authorities, the press, and the Chambers family. As Mercer turned to leave, Dominic called after him. This isn't over. Men like me don't just disappear. For your sake, Mercer replied without looking back. I hope that's not true. Walking back to his car, Mercer felt no triumph, only resolution. The confrontation had confirmed what he already knew. Dominic would never stop unless forced by circumstances beyond his control. The next morning, Mercer learned Dominic had emptied his accounts and boarded a private jet to an unknown international destination. The immediate threat had passed, but Mercer harbored no illusions about permanent victory. Dominic had merely retreated to regroup. With one opponent temporarily neutralized, Mercer turned his attention to the broader conflict. The Chambers family remained divided. Vincent and Natalia now aligned against the continued hostilities, Brooks and Lawson still resentful of Mercer's success at their expense. The company itself stood at a precipice. Without Dominic's manipulative leadership, Chambers' development faced the stark reality of depleted resources, departed clients, and a damaged reputation. Their financial position was dire, with loan covenants at risk of default within weeks. As Mercer reviewed these developments with Sophia, she asked the question that would define the next phase of the conflict. What happens to Chambers' development now? Do we let them fail completely? Mercer considered his options carefully. Complete destruction of the Chambers' legacy would be a hollow victory. Eliminating a storied architectural firm would impoverish the industry he loved. Vincent asked me to help save the company, he said finally. I agreed, but on my terms. It's time to present those terms. As part of his agreement with Vincent, Mercer had developed a comprehensive restructuring plan for Chambers' development, one that would preserve its architectural legacy while fundamentally changing its ownership and management structure. Now, with Dominic gone and the company teetering on bankruptcy, the moment had arrived to implement that plan, not as a rescue, but as a conquest. Mercer contacted Vincent Chambers to arrange a meeting of both companies' leadership teams. "It's time to end this war," he told the old man. "One way or another." Chapter 7. Terms of Surrender. The conference room at Metropolitan Bank's downtown headquarters provided neutral territory for what promised to be contentious negotiations. Vincent Chambers had insisted on the location, leveraging his long relationship with the bank's chairman to secure the space and establish an atmosphere of financial gravitas. Mercer arrived first with Sophia and his legal team, arranging materials at one end of the imposing mahogany table. The Chambers contingent entered 15 minutes later, Vincent in his wheelchair, flanked by Brooks and Lawson, with Natalia following behind. The brothers' faces reflected a mixture of hostility and resignation, the expressions of men forced to negotiate with an enemy they still hoped to destroy. Vincent opened the proceedings with characteristic directness. "We're here because both our companies face existential threats. Continued conflict benefits no one except our competitors and Dominic Russo, wherever he's hiding. Today we either find a path forward together, or we ensure mutual destruction." Brooks scoffed. "Your company is on the verge of bankruptcy, while Donovan's firm is thriving. This isn't a meeting of equals." "Your information is outdated," Mercer replied calmly. "My company faces its own challenges, permit delays, capital constraints, staffing shortages. More importantly, the market is questioning both our organization's stability given our public conflict. Clients are migrating to safer alternatives." This assessment, though slightly exaggerated regarding Donovan Design's position, created a framework of mutual need rather than one-sided desperation. "What exactly are you proposing?" Lawson demanded. "A merger," Mercer announced, sliding presentation folders across the table. But not a conventional one. As the Chambers brothers reviewed the documents, their expressions morphed from skepticism to shock. "This isn't a merger," Brooks protested. "It's an acquisition disguised as a partnership." Mercer nodded. "In essence, yes. Donovan Design would acquire controlling interest in Chambers' development through a combination of debt assumption and equity exchange. Your family would retain significant ownership, but limited operational control." "Absolutely not," Lawson declared, pushing the folder away. "We'd rather file for bankruptcy protection." "An option you've already explored," Mercer noted. "Your lenders have made clear they'll force liquidation rather than reorganization given the circumstances. At that point, I'll simply purchase your assets at discount through bankruptcy proceedings." Vincent, who had remained silent during this exchange, finally spoke. "The difference, my sons, is that Mercer's proposal preserves the Chambers' name and legacy. Bankruptcy would erase 3 generations of work." "You knew about this?" Brooks asked his father incredulously. "You helped him plan our surrender?" "I helped plan your survival," Vincent corrected. "After you allowed Dominic Russo to nearly destroy everything we built." Natalia, who had been quietly examining the proposal, looked up at Mercer. "The terms regarding the executive team are unclear. What roles do you envision for current Chambers leadership?" "That depends on capabilities and commitment," Mercer replied diplomatically. "Some positions would naturally be redundant after merger." The implication was clear. Those who opposed the merger would find themselves marginalized or removed entirely. What followed was 6 hours of intense negotiation, with breaks for private family discussions and consultation with advisors. The Chambers brothers fought tenaciously for better terms, while Vincent and Natalia gradually aligned with Mercer's fundamental approach while negotiating improvements to specific provisions. By evening, a framework had emerged. Donovan Design would acquire 51% of Chambers' development through a combination of debt assumption, capital injection, and equity swap. The merged entity would be renamed Chambers Donovan Group for a transition period of 2 years, after which the simplified CDG architecture would become the permanent branding. Vincent would become chairman emeritus with no operational role but significant advisory influence. Mercer would serve as CEO and chief design officer. Natalia would assume the role of chief client officer, leveraging her relationship skills in a clearly defined capacity. Brooks and Lawson would receive generous severance packages structured as consulting agreements that effectively removed them from operations. As the meeting concluded, Vincent asked for a moment alone with Mercer. When the room had cleared, The old man studied his former son-in-law with a mixture of admiration and sadness. "You've won more completely than I anticipated," Vincent acknowledged. "When I asked for your help saving the company, I didn't envision you owning it." "The company couldn't survive in its current form," Mercer explained. "The culture of entitlement your sons created made true partnership impossible. This structure allows preservation of what matters, the architectural legacy, while removing what was destructive." Vincent nodded slowly. "And what of personal legacies? You and Natalia were once building something together that had nothing to do with business." "That structure collapsed due to fundamental flaws in its foundation," Mercer replied, the architectural metaphor deliberate. "Some buildings can't be saved, only remembered." "Perhaps," Vincent mused, "though I've seen remarkable reconstructions in my time." He extended his hand. "In any case, I respect what you've accomplished. You've beaten the Chambers family at our own game, and done it without sacrificing your principles." As they shook hands, Mercer felt an unexpected emotion, not triumph, but a complex melancholy. He had achieved more than simple revenge. He had transformed destruction into creation. Yet the personal cost remained immeasurable. Later that evening, Mercer sat alone in his office reviewing the draft merger agreement when Sophia entered with a bottle of champagne. "Should we celebrate?" she asked, noting his pensive expression. "I'm not sure what we're celebrating exactly," Mercer admitted. "Victory? Survival? Transformation? All of the above." Sophia poured 2 glasses. "Plus something more important, having the right allies through the battle." They touched glasses in a quiet toast, both understanding that while one phase of conflict had ended, the integration challenges ahead would require equal determination. "What about Dominic?" Sophia asked after a moment. "He's still out there, presumably planning his return. I've arranged monitoring of his movements through contacts in international banking," Mercer explained. "If he attempts to re-establish himself here, we'll have advance warning." "And Natalia? Can you work with her after everything that's happened?" Mercer considered the question carefully. "Professionally, yes. Her skills complement mine, and her relationships with certain clients remain valuable. Personally," he shrugged, "that's a separate reconstruction project with uncertain viability." The merger announcement the following week generated extensive industry coverage, with analyses generally portraying it as a brilliant strategic move that leveraged Chambers' established name and Donovan's innovative approach. Financial markets responded positively, with the newly formed company's valuation exceeding the combined previous values of both firms. Privately, Mercer understood this was just the beginning. The real work of integration, of cultures, projects, and personalities, would determine whether this forced marriage could produce lasting success. One question remained unresolved as the merger proceeded. What would happen when Dominic Russo inevitably reappeared to seek his own version of justice? Chapter 8: Reconstruction and Reckoning. The summer months following the merger brought relentless work as Mercer led the integration of 2 companies with fundamentally different cultures. Chambers' development had operated on tradition, hierarchy, and relationship maintenance. Donovan design functioned through innovation, meritocracy, and design excellence. Blending these approaches required both sensitivity and firmness. Mercer established joint design teams combining personnel from both firms, deliberately mixing strengths and approaches. He implemented new evaluation systems that rewarded both creative excellence and relationship management. And he personally reviewed key projects to ensure they reflected the best of both legacy companies. The most significant integration challenge involved Natalia. As Chief Client Officer, she excelled at maintaining relationships with established clients while articulating the enhanced capabilities of the merged firm. But personal tension between her and Mercer remained palpable, creating awkwardness in leadership meetings and client presentations. After one particularly difficult executive session where their conflicting perspectives had created visible discomfort for others, Mercer invited Natalia to his office for a frank discussion. "We need to address the elephant in the boardroom," he began once they were seated. "Our personal history is interfering with business operations." Natalia nodded reluctantly. "I've noticed. It's particularly uncomfortable when clients who knew us as a couple try to navigate our current situation." "Exactly. We have 2 options. We can create a formal protocol for minimizing direct interaction, or we can find a way to genuinely move past our history and establish a new professional relationship. Which do you prefer? Natalia asked carefully. Mercer considered the question honestly. I believe in architectural terms. Demolition is easier than renovation. But renovation often yields more interesting results. A ghost of a smile touched Natalia's lips at the metaphor. Renovation requires assessing which structural elements remain sound. Truth is foundational, Mercer agreed. So let me ask directly. Why did you choose Dominic over our marriage and partnership? The directness of the question seemed to startle Natalia, but after a moment, she answered with equal candor. It wasn't a single choice, but a series of small compromises. You were increasingly absorbed in design challenges, spending more time with creative teams than in strategy discussions where decisions were made. You felt excluded, Mercer acknowledged. Yes, and Dominic noticed. He deliberately included me, asked my opinion, treated me as an equal partner rather than an accessory to his success. I never saw you as an accessory, Mercer objected. Not consciously, but you would share completed designs rather than works in progress. Present conclusions rather than invite collaboration. Dominic exploited that gap. Mercer absorbed this perspective, recognizing its partial truth. And the affair? Was that also about feeling valued? Natalia had the grace to look genuinely remorseful. That was inexcusable, regardless of circumstances. I should have addressed my concerns directly with you before allowing any line to be crossed. This acknowledgement, the first genuine acceptance of responsibility Natalia had expressed, created an opening for authentic dialogue. For the next hour, they engaged in the kind of honest communication that had been absent during their marriage's final year. They identified patterns of misunderstanding, acknowledged mutual contributions to their relationship's failure, and recognized how Dominic had strategically widened their divisions. I'm not seeking reconciliation, Mercer clarified as their conversation concluded. But I am interested in building a functional professional relationship that doesn't require constant navigation of emotional landmines. As am I, Natalia agreed. The company deserves better than leadership distracted by personal history. This conversation marked a turning point in the merger integration. With Mercer and Natalia demonstrating civil, even occasionally warm, professional interaction, the broader organization began functioning more cohesively. Project teams stopped feeling forced to choose sides, and client relationships stabilized. By September, Chambers Donovan Group had secured 3 major new contracts that neither firm could have won independently. The company's reputation for combining innovative design with deep client relationships was becoming its distinctive market advantage. This progress was interrupted one morning when Sophia rushed into Mercer's office, visibly concerned. Dominic Russo is back, she announced without preamble. He was spotted at Kennedy Airport yesterday, arriving on a flight from Geneva. Mercer had been anticipating this development. Any contact with former Chambers executives or known associates? Not yet, but our sources indicate he's booked a suite at the Westmont for a month. He's planning to stay. Inform security at all our offices and project sites, Mercer instructed. Activate the monitoring protocols we established, and arrange a meeting with Detective Rivera this afternoon. Sophia hesitated. Should we tell Natalia? I'll handle that personally, Mercer decided. She deserves direct communication rather than office rumors. Natalia received the news of Dominic's return with surprising composure. I expected this eventually. What's our response plan? That depends on his actions, Mercer replied. If he simply resumes his career elsewhere, we monitor but don't engage. If he moves against the company or any of us personally, we implement countermeasures. He won't just walk away, Natalia said with certainty. His ego won't allow it. Her assessment proved accurate sooner than expected. That evening, both Mercer and Natalia received identical text messages from an unknown number. Congratulations on your merger of equals. Enjoy it while it lasts. Partnerships built on betrayal inevitably collapse. Dr. The next morning, the architectural trade publication Design Innovate published a lengthy industry analysis questioning the financial viability of the Chambers-Donovan merger, citing anonymous insider concerns about integration challenges and leadership conflicts. The piece specifically highlighted tensions between former spouses now forced to collaborate professionally. He's starting with reputation damage, Sophia observed during an emergency communication team meeting. Classic Dominic approach. create external perception problems that become self-fulfilling prophecies. Mercer agreed. Let's respond with transparency rather than defensiveness. Schedule joint interviews for Natalia and me with key publications. Release updated financial projections showing integration benefits. Accelerate announcement of the Riverfront District project. These countermeasures blunted the initial attack, but Dominic quickly escalated. 3 junior architects who had worked closely with him at Chambers Development suddenly resigned, taking proprietary design documents and client information with them. Investigation revealed they had been receiving payments from a Swiss account for months, positioning them as sleeper agents activated upon Dominic's return. More concerning was evidence that someone with high-level access had been examining confidential merger integration documents, including financial projections and client retention strategies. Internal logs showed these materials had been accessed using Natalia's security credentials during hours she was verifiably elsewhere. When confronted with this information, Natalia was horrified. I haven't shared my credentials with anyone. Is it possible my access was compromised? The cybersecurity team confirmed sophisticated hacking attempts against multiple executive accounts, with Natalia's among the few successfully breached. The infiltration had all the hallmarks of professional industrial espionage. He's gathering intelligence for a comprehensive attack, Mercer concluded during a secure leadership meeting. Dominic never launches a major move without thorough preparation. That assessment was validated when Brooks and Lawson Chambers, supposedly removed from operations under their consulting agreements, called an emergency board meeting citing fiduciary concerns about current management direction. Though lacking voting control, they retained board seats representing family interests. Their involvement signaled Dominic had re-established contact and was orchestrating a multi-front assault on Mercer's leadership position. The board meeting became a battlefield, with Brooks and Lawson presenting misleading financial analyses suggesting the merger had damaged company value rather than enhanced it. They proposed a strategic restructuring that would effectively reverse the merger's leadership structure, returning control to Chambers' family representatives while reducing Mercer to a design consultant role. Mercer, prepared for this maneuver, systematically dismantled their arguments with comprehensive performance metrics and client satisfaction data. When Brooks claimed widespread employee dissatisfaction with integration policies, Mercer presented results from an independent cultural assessment showing dramatically improved engagement scores. The attempted coup failed, with independent board members unanimously supporting current management. But the brothers' willingness to align with Dominic after his previous betrayal demonstrated the threat's seriousness. Dominic had apparently convinced them Mercer represented a greater danger to their interests than himself. Following the board meeting, Mercer received another text, "Round 1 to you. But I've only begun to play. Every strength can become a vulnerability when properly leveraged. Your greatest strength has always been your reputation for integrity. What happens when that's destroyed? Dr." The implied threat became clear the following week when local media reported a criminal investigation into alleged building code violations at multiple Chambers Donovan projects. Anonymous sources claimed the company had knowingly used substandard materials while falsifying inspection reports. Although completely fabricated, the allegations triggered mandatory safety reviews that delayed construction and frightened clients. The company's stock price dropped 15% in 2 days despite emphatic denials and offers of independent verification. Mercer recognized the strategy. Dominic was attacking precisely as threatened, undermining the one asset most difficult to defend, perceived integrity. Once public doubt existed, proving a negative became nearly impossible. "We need to shift from defense to offense," Mercer told his crisis team. Dominic believes he's controlling the narrative, but he's vulnerable in ways he doesn't recognize. Mercer implemented a 3-part counterattack. First, he invited regulatory inspectors to conduct completely transparent reviews of all projects, with media representatives present to document the process. Second, he filed formal complaints identifying the pattern of false allegations as criminal defamation and market manipulation. Finally, he activated the nuclear option he had previously withheld, releasing documentation of the Russo Family Foundation's tax evasion to both authorities and select journalists. "This goes beyond our business dispute," Mercer explained to Vincent when informing him of the escalation. Dominic is attempting to destroy an entire company and hundreds of employees' livelihoods out of personal vendetta. That crosses a line I cannot ignore. The counteroffensive created immediate pressure on Dominic. Tax authorities announced an investigation into the Russo family foundation. Financial regulators began examining suspicious trading patterns around the negative stories, and most significantly, inspection results definitively cleared all Chambers Donovan projects of safety concerns. Rather than retreating, Dominic escalated to his most desperate attack. During a major client presentation at Chambers Donovan headquarters, armed intruders forced their way past security. They took hostages in the main conference room where Mercer, Natalia, and key executives were presenting to representatives of an international development consortium. "Nobody moves," the lead intruder shouted, brandishing a weapon. "This is about getting the truth on record." The truth they claimed to seek involved forcing Mercer to read a prepared statement admitting to design failures, financial misconduct, and personal improprieties. The entire incident was being live-streamed to industry media outlets, clearly intended as a public destruction of Mercer's credibility, even if later repudiated under duress. "Read it," the masked leader demanded, shoving a tablet toward Mercer. "Read it now, or we start hurting people." Mercer took the tablet, but made no move to read the statement. Instead, he looked directly at the leader. "Dominic sent you, obviously. Did he mention I anticipated something like this?" The intruder hesitated momentarily, just long enough for Mercer's prearranged security protocol to activate. Hidden gas emitters released a non-lethal incapacitating agent into the conference room's ventilation system. Simultaneously, ballistic shields descended from ceiling compartments, separating hostages from intruders. Mercer, Natalia, and other executives who had been briefed on the protocol donned concealed emergency respirators while clients were protected by the shields. Within seconds, the intruders collapsed from the gas effects as tactical security personnel entered through hidden access panels. The entire incident lasted less than 2 minutes. No hostages were injured, the intruders were apprehended, and perhaps most importantly, the livestream captured the entire failed attack, transforming Dominic's planned public humiliation of Mercer into dramatic evidence of his own criminal conspiracy. In the aftermath, as police secured the scene and medical personnel examined everyone involved, Natalia approached Mercer with newfound respect. "You knew this was coming. You were prepared." "I understood Dominic's escalation pattern," Mercer explained. When reputation attacks and financial pressure failed, physical intimidation was his logical next step. The respirators, the shields, the security response. How long has all that been in place? "Since the merger. I had the security systems integrated during the first renovation phase." Mercer managed a tired smile. An architect always considers all aspects of building safety. 2 hours later, after providing statements to authorities, Mercer received a call from Detective Rivera. "We picked up Russo at a private airfield trying to flee the country. He's claiming no knowledge of the attack, but one of the intruders is already cooperating, providing text messages and payment records." "Will the charges stick?" Mercer asked. "Conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, corporate terrorism. He's facing decades in prison. His family connections might reduce the sentence, but he's not walking away from this." After disconnecting, Mercer found Natalia waiting outside his office. "It's over then?" she asked. "This phase, at least," Mercer confirmed. "Dominic's neutralized. Your brothers are discredited with the board. The company's reputation will actually be enhanced by how we handled the crisis." "And us?" Natalia asked, the question encompassing their complex personal and professional relationship. "We keep building," Mercer replied simply. "That's what architects do." Chapter 9. New Foundations. 1 year after the merger that created Chambers Donovan Group, Mercer stood on the observation deck of their new headquarters building, surveying the city skyline now punctuated by several of his designs. The headquarters itself embodied the philosophy of the merged company, a harmonious blend of traditional Chambers solidity and Donovan innovation. The glass-walled conference room behind him hummed with activity as executives prepared for the upcoming annual shareholder meeting. Financial results had exceeded even optimistic projections. The company's reputation had not just recovered from Dominic's attacks, but was enhanced by the transparent way leadership had handled the crisis. Dominic himself was serving a 12-year sentence after pleading guilty to reduced charges of conspiracy and corporate espionage. His family's reputation and finances were in shambles following tax investigations triggered by Mercer's evidence. The Russo name, once synonymous with old money respectability, was now associated with fraud and criminal behavior. Brooks and Lawson Chambers had resigned from the board following their failed coup attempt, accepting enhanced severance packages in exchange for relinquishing all company involvement. They had relocated to Europe, reportedly attempting to establish a small development firm trading on the family name, but finding limited success. Vincent Chambers had witnessed these dramatic transformations from his position as chairman emeritus. Though his health continued to decline, his mind remained sharp. He had become one of Mercer's strongest supporters, frequently noting that Mercer saved the Chambers' legacy by transforming rather than destroying it. As Mercer reflected on these developments, Natalia joined him at the window. Their professional relationship had evolved into an effective partnership built on mutual respect and clear communication, qualities their marriage had ultimately lacked. "The board presentation is ready whenever you are," she informed him. "Sophia added the Westridge project renders you requested." "Thanks. I'll be in shortly." Mercer continued gazing at the city. "It's remarkable how much has changed in a year." "Including us," Natalia observed. "We're probably better business partners than we ever were as spouses." Mercer nodded. "We built our marriage on romantic ideals without proper structural support. The business partnership has stronger foundations, clearly defined roles, explicit expectations, structured communication. Always the architect, even in personal matters," Natalia said with a small smile. "Speaking of personal matters, I understand you've been seeing someone." Mercer looked surprised. "Office gossip is remarkably efficient." "Olivia Murray seems lovely," Natalia continued. "She joined you from Donovan Design, didn't she?" "She was my executive assistant there, yes. She's now heading our community engagement division." Mercer hesitated. "It's relatively new. We're proceeding carefully." "I'm glad," Natalia said sincerely. "After everything that happened, you deserve happiness." The conversation was interrupted by Sophia's arrival with urgent news. "The Riverfront District project, we won the final approval. Construction can begin next month." This project held special significance for Mercer. It had been his design originally at Chambers, then his required condition when helping Vincent save the company, and now represented the flagship development of the merged organization. The mixed-use, sustainable community would transform an abandoned industrial zone into vibrant residential, commercial, and cultural spaces. "That's welcome news before the shareholder meeting," Mercer acknowledged. "Is the team ready for the presentation?" "Completely," Sophia confirmed, including the announcement about the new corporate structure. The new corporate structure represented the final phase of Mercer's long-term vision. After proving the merger's success, he was now implementing a more distributed leadership model with himself as executive chairman focused on design vision while promoting others to operational leadership positions. Sophia would become CEO, with Natalia continuing as chief client officer. The structure recognized talents beyond Mercer's while ensuring his architectural vision remained central to company identity. This evolution reflected Mercer's personal growth as well. The vengeful architect who had methodically dismantled his enemies had transformed into a builder of organizations as well as buildings. He had discovered that true power came not from destroying opponents, but from creating systems that rendered opposition irrelevant. As the shareholder meeting commenced, Mercer delivered a keynote presentation highlighting the company's achievements and future vision. He acknowledged the tumultuous path to their current success without dwelling on past conflicts. Instead, he emphasized the architectural principles that had guided his approach to business integration. Architecture teaches us that the most enduring structures balance innovation with tradition, aesthetics with functionality, and individual vision with collaborative execution, he explained to shareholders. "We've applied these same principles to building our company." The announcement of the new leadership structure was received enthusiastically, with share prices jumping 7% by day's end. Industry analysts praised the evolution as ensuring creative continuity while expanding operational capacity, exactly the balance Mercer had sought. Following the formal meeting, Vincent requested a private conversation with Mercer in the chairman's office that had once been his own. "A remarkable performance today," the old man said as Mercer helped him from his wheelchair to a comfortable chair. You've accomplished everything you set out to do, and more. With considerable help, Mercer acknowledged, including yours at critical moments. Vincent waved away the credit. I simply recognized which horse to back when the race clarified. He studied Mercer thoughtfully. Was it worth it? The vendetta, the battles, the victory? Mercer considered the question carefully. If you'd asked me during the worst moments, I might have said no. The constant conflict, the need to anticipate threats, the personal toll, it was exhausting. And now I see it differently. Not as revenge, but as necessary creative destruction. Mercer gestured toward the architectural models displayed around the office. Every great building begins with clearing what previously occupied the space. Sometimes that process is more difficult than anticipated. Vincent nodded appreciatively at the metaphor. And Natalia? Do you regret how that relationship ended? I regret that we built something that couldn't withstand pressure, Mercer replied. But I don't regret the lessons that came from its collapse. They've made me both a better architect and a better human. The conversation shifted to the Riverfront District project, with Vincent offering insights from his decades of development experience. As they discussed technical details, Mercer was struck by the genuine camaraderie that had developed between them, a relationship that might never have formed without the crucible of conflict they had navigated. Later that evening, at a company celebration of the Riverfront approval, Mercer found himself momentarily alone, observing the easy interaction of executives who had once been fierce rivals. Sophia expertly managed conversations with major investors. Natalia charmed city officials crucial to project approvals. His design team, merged from both legacy companies, enthusiastically explained technical innovations to interested parties. Olivia Murray approached, offering a champagne flute. You're unusually quiet for someone celebrating a major victory, she observed. Just appreciating the architecture of the moment, Mercer replied, accepting the glass. Seeing how all the components work together. And do they work to your satisfaction, Mr. Architect? She asked with the directness he had always appreciated in her. Mercer surveyed the room once more. Colleagues who had become friends, adversaries transformed into allies, and a company culture built from the best elements of two previously competing visions. Yes, he decided, raising his glass in a private toast. The structure appears sound. As Mercer mingled with colleagues and clients throughout the evening, he reflected on the journey from that Thanksgiving confrontation to this moment of professional triumph. The painful words still echoed occasionally in memory. We're cutting you out of the family business, and her new lover will take your position. Those words had triggered a chain of events none of his antagonists could have anticipated. Their attempt to excise him from a company had instead led to his control of it. Their betrayal had catalyzed not his destruction, but his greatest success. In architectural terms, they had unknowingly removed a load-bearing wall, causing their own structure to collapse while enabling him to design something far superior in its place. That was the true nature of his revenge, not merely surviving their attempt to destroy him, but transforming it into the foundation for something they could never have built themselves. Something that would stand long after the personal conflicts that spawned it had faded from memory. The architect had created his masterpiece not just in steel and glass, but in the organization that would continue his vision beyond any individual building. That was a legacy even his enemies had unwittingly helped him construct, more lasting and more meaningful than any act of pure vengeance could have achieved.